Connect your life, what you read. Let's get hooked with book and read in every nook. Share the stories that you read. I feel it in my heart, beat by beat. I feel it in my mind, I'm ready to read. I read, I read, I 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 read. Looking for a laughter, it's fun is what you're after. Grazing for adventure, if there's a question in your mind, pick a book, take a look. Pick a book and take a look. Understand what you read. Understand what you read. Connect your life, what you read. Connect your life, what you read. Let's get hooked with book and read in every nook. Share the stories that you read. I feel it in my heart, beat by beat. I feel it in my mind, I'm ready to read. I read, I read, I 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 read.
A gentleman was walking through an elephant camp, and he spotted that the elephants weren't being kept in cages or held by the use of chain. All that was holding them back from escaping the camp was a small piece of rope tied to one of their legs. As the man gazed upon the elephants, he was completely confused as why the elephants didn't just use their strength to break the rope and escape the camp. They could easily have done so, but instead they didn't try to at all. Curious and wanting to know the answer, he asked a trainer nearby why the elephants were just standing there and never trying to escape. The trainer replied, "When they were very young and much smaller, we used the same sized rope to tie them, and at that age it was enough to hold them back. As they grew up, they are conditioned to believe they cannot break away. They believe the rope can still hold them back, so they never try to break free." The only reason the elephants weren't breaking free and escaping from the camp was because over time they adopted the belief that it just wasn't possible. Moral of the story: no matter how much the world tries to hold you back, always continue with the belief that what you want to achieve is possible. Believing you can become successful is the most important step in actually achieving it.
My name is Jigmewanga Thiring and I am 13 years old. I study in Changkha Middle Secondary School. The book that I've been reading recently is A Play of the Cosmos by Chitim Tharchin. The story is about Drugel and Yijin, who are in high school. Drugel is an artist and he falls in love with Yizin. They have many problems but end up together. But Drugel dies by blood disease. The lesson that I've learned is always believe in your dreams. The other title I would give is Drugel's Sad Story. I would like to meet Drugel in real life because he is an artist. I wish that Drugel had not died in the end. I would ask the author what happened to the grandmother. Yes, it would make a great movie or television show because it is interesting.
My name is Blake Evans. I'm from the United States of America, and I've been teaching at ELC High for a few years, and right now I'm teaching grade 8, 9, and 10. I think it's what we do in the classroom. The way that we read in the class, the way that we focus on certain elements of the literature that we're reading. I feel like if you read a short story but don't know the elements, you're going to be missing out on characters and plot and a great conflict, a great type of conflict that maybe you've never thought about before. So there's that aspect. And then another aspect that I really like to do is that on Mondays we read in the class and we discuss a little bit, but then on Tuesdays we pick up on that discussion and we really prepare for a good discussion, and we each have different, very specific roles. I think that when we are forced to discuss a text, it forces us to think about it, think critically, creatively. It encourages us to interact socially, to interact even on topics that are more interesting to you than maybe what the author was hoping for. There's always ways to relate it to the person, and the best type of book or poem is one that is most related to, the one that they're getting the most out of, the most values out of. So I really encourage discussion on the following day after reading. So for a parent and a son or a daughter, what they can do is just read together. Even if they read separately, individually, they can come together, discuss it, ask questions. What were you thinking during this part? How did you feel during this part? And I feel like just processing the story mentally, not only does it help them understand it, but it helps them pay attention the next time they read, because they're going to feel forced to have something to say in the discussion group. So this paying attention is also a big key as well, that a big hurdle we have to get over. Reading is so important in leadership. It's so important. The rest of your life, you're going to have to be a reader. You're going to have to be a lifelong learner to lead, to help people grow, to connect in people's lives and society, to make a difference. I know everyone here wants to make a difference. So in order to do that, we're going to have to keep reading fiction and nonfiction. But one particular thing is fiction. Something that I want to see my students grow in is putting themselves in someone else's shoes. That real empathy, you know, and the way you get that, specifically, you take a Jane Austen book and you get into someone's shoes. Should they make this decision to marry this person or not, you know? And you, as the reader, you're in their shoes, but you're also thinking based off of your past experience, based off of what you're going through in your own relationships, and it helps you. You might not see it today, you might not see it tomorrow, but when you're in the workplace, when you're in the marketplace, if you're in Parliament, you're going to have all these interpersonal relationships, and it is going to help you in communication, in life skills, in stepping back before you get angry and saying, oh, maybe they're going through something similar that I've kind of lodged in the back of my brain somewhere in the fictions that I've read. So I think social awareness is a huge reason that we should continue reading. For the middle schoolers, 7, 8, 9, I really like the Chronicles of Narnia series by C.S. Lewis. It's a whole series, multiple books. It's fantasy. Fantasy just allows you to view your world by viewing some other fantasy world first. It's really powerful in the values. I think there's some books out there that just aren't as good literature. But I think this has tested, stood the test of time, and these have been some great books that get students using their imagination, really enjoying it. They're page turners, they're written really well. They also give you a little insight into a little British culture as well. So I like the fantasy, the Chronicles of Narnia series. A recent book that I read maybe for older grades, I think that would really grab people's attention, is a historical fiction called Beneath the Scarlet Sky. It's actually more of an adult read, but I think grade 10 and above would really enjoy this book. I was riveted. I was so emotional during this book. And I particularly love historical fiction because it's fiction, so you get into their minds, you get into this, this not real world, but because it's historical, it has a time and a place. And I love, personally, learning more about history. I love learning about World War II. So this particular book, Beneath the Scarlet Sky, is a World War II historical fiction. And it helped me see the war from Italy's perspective. And you read, there's so many stories out there, there's so many books out there, but I think I'm doubly blessed when I can enjoy a good plot and yet also learn more about what Italy was going through, during this time period. First of all, I think for the teachers, using the reading strategies yourself and using that in your classroom. So let's say it's asking questions. So we have a role in our discussion groups called questioner or discussion director. And they have to learn how to ask questions. What's going on here? Why is he doing this? What's his motivation? What's the conflict here? Just when you approach a book, not just as an assignment, but as a learning opportunity, you're going to get so much more out of it. So that would be for the students and the teachers in the classroom. There's also the connections that we make. I think if we can think about, have I experienced something like this? Does this remind me of another book? Does this remind me of a movie? We naturally do this, we naturally do it, but at the same time we need to focus and intentionally make those connections. One thing we do with my family, so I have 3 boys living here in Bhutan, and what we do, they're in elementary age, but we use Charlotte Mason's theory of called narration. So Charlotte Mason had this idea that if students listen to a text or read a text, they need to immediately they need to narrate it back, which means put it into their own words, basically. Narrate's a big word for that. And when they put it into their own words, they realize that I have to be paying attention as I'm reading because my mom or my teacher is going to ask me, what did I just read? Maybe it's just 1 page. I do this in my classroom. I'll read 1 page aloud, and if I see they're all sleeping or they're not very interested or whatever, I say, now tell the person next to you in your own words what just happened. That's all you have to do. And they immediately, the first couple times, they might just say, oh, I wasn't really paying attention. But then the next few times, they're going to say, oh, this person was hiding Jews in her home. They're going to get into the plot more because they know they have to tell it. It's instant accountability, really. But what it also does is it's going to help them in their writing. So in order to become a better writer, naturally we need to read. But then you also need to process it through your own facilities, mental capacity, and tell it to someone else. And that's going to help in your own writing later on. I think that's really a missing link, is this thing called narration. So with my fourth grader at home. He takes my wife's mobile phone and he goes to the voice recorder. Then he presses record. My wife might not even listen to all his recordings and his ramblings, but after he reads a chapter, he has to press record and he'll say, okay, in the beginning of this chapter, this character met this character, and he'll explain the whole thing, and he's getting better and better at it. He loves reading. I think this is a big part of it, that he's actually processing it. And so I think that's a real tip that anyone can do just with the voice recorder at home. And if you want, as a parent, then you can always check in on what are they reading, and then just press play and listen to what they're thinking about. And then you can have discussions, great parent-child discussions based off of what they're reading. I like the classics, so if I found a Charles Dickens for grade 9 and 10, even above for sure, it is a challenging thing, but his sense of character development is unmatched even today. So Charles Dickens, like I said, Jane Austen. I'm looking here even now where that would be. So I chose Oliver Twist, a Charles Dickens novel. He discovered that the poorhouses in England were a really bad thing, where poor people were given very meager conditions to live in, not paid very much. It was a way of just pushing the poor to the side. And so this, I mean, your heart is just wrenched over and over as you read about how Oliver, how the orphans in this book were really treated so poorly. And yet, his plot development, I won't give away everything, the way you see grace and mercy, the way you see people with compassion looking at them, I think that really would speak to people in our own day and age, in our own society, and show that really triumphs. And it's a really, really cleverly written book. I think Charles Dickens is just one of the masters. So I'd really recommend this book, although it is 450 pages.
Hi, my name is Arun Bhattarai and I am a documentary filmmaker based in Thimphu. For me, as a filmmaker, reading is very important because it helps me to understand the characteristics of individual people and also to kind of build a portrait out of their individual nature. So for me, it's really important, and generally I think reading kind of helps you to understand other people, other places, and it also makes you a better speaker, a better writer. So yeah, reading is essential, I would say. When I was in high school, when I was studying in the eastern part of Bhutan, I actually didn't have a favorite book. I used to read all sorts of books, from like little magazines like the Children's World to a lot of comic books to Sidney Sheldon to all sorts of books I used to read. Right now I am reading a book called as Flights. It's a book written by Olga Tokarczuk. She is a Polish writer, and she won the Nobel Prize for Literature 2 years ago. Right now this book is actually now becoming one of my favorite books, because this is a novel about traveling in the 21st century, and in the book there are a lot of diaries or memoirs of the writer herself, and at the same time there are other episodes about fictional episodes that are written by the writer herself, and she has mixed it up, and all the episodes are loosely connected. So I really like this book, and I would recommend this to everyone.